I call the animals, I call them my brothers and my sisters. And the problems that our people were having amongst ourselves were discussed. And those discussions led back in those days, chiefs to sit down and select an individual to go out, try and find out in the universe somewhere to bring our people together, to be able to work together. And they selected a young man. This young man went out to people in the geek. He said he was willing to help them. The geek is the otter. That young man and that otter communicate and would be able to talk to one another, they could understand each other. And the responsibility, the role that young man was playing, along with that otter, was to go out and seek in this world something that would help provide guidance to our people on how we need to do our business. And we were petitioning the other animals out there. They went out and petitioned the wolf, they petitioned the bear, they petitioned the turtle, and they petitioned all the different animals. Finally, the one come forward. The wolf or the bear came forward and said, I'll help you. I'll try and help you. And then gradually the other animals came forward to help. They wanted to help us as human people, as Anishinaabe, as humans, to be able to do to play our roles and responsibilities in a good way. And from that evolved our clan system. That's the story that our people tell us. So, as he was moving along through the years, through the time, he was this otter. When they came to this huge body of water where he needed to go on the other side to try and achieve more help and get more help. And this young man was afraid to go down water to get across that side. And the water was moving so fast, he was afraid that he might drown. And as he was standing there looking at that water, he looked down and he sees a reflection of himself. And in that reflection, to his surprise, his braids had turned gray. His face was aged. And he looked at that otter. And that otter's face was gray as well. And then he come to realize that he dedicated his life to trying to make things for our people in a good way. But it seemed to happen so fast. And ultimately, he was up across the waters returning, and he decided to go out. And the otter went in, and then he went in, and quickly the water disappeared. The man moved up and went across to the other side to continue on with his work. And our story kind of ends there. It tells us that the amount of work that our people have done over the years, you know, it seems to move by very fast. We sit here and we look at our assembly, the 48th assembly, 48th annual assembly. I know myself, I've been, you know, very proud to say that I've been a part of that as well over those years. 8 years as chief, over 28 years on council. Gone by like that. So, you know, we need to recognize the youth and welcome them, and hopefully my words are going to be able to make a point in our leadership selection members. Once again, congratulations to AIA on this, taking this step and changing the way we do our business. And it's important that we continue on to include these items. The job that was here this morning, and the ways of our people, the water judgment, and the ways of our people, the rattles, the ways of our people. And we show there's no politics. We need to bring those to our processes as well. Hopefully, tomorrow morning, tomorrow during the day, we'll be able to share with us on our floor as we move forward. Looking kind of make it a little bit of a dress up maybe tomorrow. If these gentlemen have the ribbon shirts with you at all, I'll ask you to wear them. We are embarking on a new I guess, one of the things, when I began, one of the first things that I need to do, and when I try to start, is to acknowledge the Creator, Yeshua Madu, we call it the time spirit. And I'm sure, somebody will be so, whatever you call it in your language, the time person, time being. We need to acknowledge all that we do. We're here this morning, that's where we begin our day, acknowledging. And we acknowledge one another for directions and those spirits in those directions and the people in those directions. And that's a little bit of language that I know about people. When I pray, that's the way I was taught. I myself, as an individual, we as a human beings, we're the last, we're the bottom of the totem pole, so to speak. Everything else that the Creator has given us, we need to acknowledge first. So, I guess I'm going to stick into our agenda to try and keep us on time a little bit. Once again, I'm very pleased that the association has asked me to be a part of this, and I look forward to tomorrow as well. I guess according to our agenda, there's a review of a selection process. So I believe in your kids, you do have something. Do they do have a copy of the selection process? Did anybody has any comments on it or discussion on it now? The opportune time. Yeah, I think we did I did go smudging around a little bit this morning. Those candidates who want to have a smudge, we can do that. I think it's good, it would be appropriate. If there's no questions in regard to the to this new selection policy process that we're stepping into, I would ask those candidates to make yourselves available. We're stepping into the nominees, the candidates. Those of you, we're looking for somebody to volunteer. One of the three candidates that we know of who would like to get the nominee to come up and say a few words. Anyone who just wants to volunteer. Grand Chief. Deputy Grand Chief candidates.
Aloma, Nidishinzi Greg, Lenape Gikai, Anishik Kishal Mokwe, Anishik Mamani Alam. It's my honor today on behalf of my community and on behalf of my council to put Gordon Peters' name forward for the position of Deputy Grand Chief. I've known Gordon all my life. In 1979, I think was his first term on council. He served on council for a while, and then he was the president of AIAI in 1981 to 1985. He was regional chief from 1985 to 1997. During that time, he was running his own business as well. He served as deputy from October 2011 to May of 2012. And he's been Grand Chief from 2012 to the present. And during all that time, he served on council at home. But more than that, I have to tell you of a story, because I got 5 minutes, and I don't want to just talk about Gord, I want to talk about me a little bit too. But when we were very young and we were just starting out in our community, one of the things that we had was a ball team. And we used to have ball tournaments. And during these ball tournaments, we had a concession booth, and we used to sell hot dogs and pop and chips. And we were working in a concession booth one day, me and Gord and my mother and a couple other people from the community were volunteering, and there was little kids running around. And what happened was one of the little kids started to choke. And we were all just stepped back, and everybody just kind of looked at us. And Gord, without hesitation, grabbed that little girl and turned her upside down. I don't know whether that's a proper or medical procedure, but at the time he was the one that stepped up and acted immediately and patted her on the back, and she spit out her gum. And I think even at that young age, I recognized a quality there that's important in leadership, the willingness to act. And the other story that I want to tell is in 1975, our community sent us to a ball tournament, Native Canadian Fastball Championships in Hobbema. And during the course of that tournament, I was injured. And I tore a hamstring muscle, and I was in a lot of pain, and I couldn't participate with the evening festivities that were coming up on Hobbema. There was a dance, and we were all preparing and talking about it and everything. And the rest of the team went, but Gord stayed with me to make sure that I was okay. And for me, that was a very good sign of strength of character and loyalty and friendship, and I never forgot that. And in our community, Gord takes a leadership role in facilitating community dialogue, and it's been a great honor to work with him as he served on council, as I've been chief, and it's a great honor for me to be able to put his name forward. Anish.
So I just want to inform the delegates and the nominees, the nominated. We have Shayna in the back, and she has a pink sheet there. So when she brings that pink sheet up, we have 1 minute left. So, hey, Gord.
Quindi Olola. Good afternoon, everyone, and all the official delegates that are here this afternoon. It's a good day. It's a good day, new beginnings. There are things that are happening here that maybe could have happened about before, but they're happening now. So change is imminent in the world. I want to thank my cousin, Chief Peters, for the good words that he spoke, and the kindness that he always shares with all the time. For me, this afternoon, I want to walk you through a story of my work life. It shouldn't take me long. You work very hard sometimes. But I want to talk to you because it's important that it's the process that I've gone through for these last, from 1981 till today. And when I was young, I knew my father and many other leaders, and my father, my uncle. I knew they were doing work for the government to protecting our rights. They were dealing with the quality of life because we didn't have housing, we didn't have anything in our communities at the time. It was pretty bleak at sometimes. And I saw the Indian agents as they went through our communities, you know. But we even played baseball with them. Came out and he played baseball with us. And so the notion of the Indian agent never clicked for me. I never understood what the Indian agent was all about. And so when the lights came on for me, I was in university. I had, for one of my courses, I had to read this book. It was a mandatory course reading by Maya Angelou. It was called I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. You know, it struck me. It was, I don't know how it did it, but it struck me to realize that what we're fighting for is freedom. That we are not free in our homelands. And so that was a really wide awakening for me. And so there was a number of things that happened at the same time for me that put kind of things into perspective. Wounded Knee was going on at the same time. So there was a siege of Wounded Knee that was happening. And then I read a book. It's called God is Red by Vine Delory Jr. And for me, it started to put a lot of things into perspective about how things were going to go on. So this freedom business, I was walking around couple decades later, and we were in a rally, and I was screaming, freedom, freedom, and me and this other guy were walking along. And when we got to the park where we were going, these two young girls, they come over and they asked us, well, how come you guys are talking about freedom? You know, why are you shouting freedom? And because we said we're not free. First of all, we're dispossessed of our lands. This is our homeland, and we're dispossessed of our lands. Secondly, that dispossession of our homelands creates dependency. We're dependent on government for whatever monies they're going to give us and how they're going to give us that money to be able to use it. And the third thing is that we're oppressed. And we're oppressed because any time we try to move outside of the box and exercise any rights or do anything, we get slapped. It's either slapped by our funders, slapped by the courts, or even in cases slapped by the police. In Oka, we were slapped by the army. And so that's the things that exist in our world. So I got elected in 1981. I became the president of AI at the time. And we were right in the midst of discussions about the Canadian constitutional process and whether or not we should be involved. And if we were involved, what were we going to put forward? Because we had Section 35 and we had this word existing. So I was kind of facilitating the AI Chiefs Committee on the Constitution before I got elected. And so I kept on working in that area. We were at a session, and they were having a dialogue about the need for a political coordinator and a technical coordinator to help move this process forward. While I was out of the room, Chief Earl Hill, in his wisdom, decided I should be the political coordinator. So I come back in the room and they said, thank you very much, we really appreciate you volunteering to be the political coordinator. But it was a tremendous learning experience for me to be involved in that process. Because the battle of the Section 35 was really about a couple of things. Was the box full or was the box empty? And of course, we took the position that the box was full and everything that we had was in the box. The government took the position that the box was empty. They called it the blank page. They said, we'll sit down with you and we'll identify what you think that you have. And when we sign them off, that's when they will exist for you. And of course, we rejected them. The second one was the word existing. They said, it doesn't mean anything. Well, we find out later on that the word existing means quite a bit. So we had 3 conferences. Not much was resolved. The biggest issue from the federal government was they wanted equal access and equal participation of rights by men and women. That was a really big push. And so you see that in the Constitution today. It's there. The equality clause is there. So we kind of were trying to figure out what was going on next. We started a Chiefs Committee process and we went across Ontario. And we asked people, what do you want to do? What do you want to do about this process? What do you want to do for us as communities? And they came out with a series of recommendations. And the easiest recommendations they came out with is that, first of all, everybody needs to get their name in their clan. Everybody needs to change the name of their community to reflect their own experience as a community. We need to map our lands and we need to put our names back on those lands so that those lands belong to us. And so we know what those names are for those lands. There was a whole series of recommendations that were there. Resolve overlapping lands and how we're going to work together. And so all of those things started in 1989, 1990. And all of a sudden, bang, we had this major surprise. A Supreme Court decision called the Sparrow case. And we were vindicated. We were vindicated for the positions we took in the Constitutional Conference because it said to us, under that Sparrow decision, all rights that exist prior to 1982 are intact. Everything that we said was there was intact. And so we set out trying to figure out how are we going to be able to take control of that decision that was coming forward. How are we going to do it? But we couldn't gain the ground necessary to work on it. And of course, we know that that right under Sparrow went from more of a collective right to an individual right. And that's where it sits today. It didn't take long for the Conservative government to come along and say, when we got into Charlottetown, and Bob Rae, who was the Premier of Ontario, got us into the Charlottetown process, and they offered us in the Charlottetown 3 areas of jurisdiction that we could exercise in our community. But all the other jurisdictions that we claim to have, they said they will be occupied by federal and provincial jurisdiction forever. In other words, they're asking us to extinguish our rights. It was a huge process for us, a huge battle. We actually went to BC. We were 116 chiefs in Ontario. We agreed that we were going to reject the Charlottetown Accord. We flew to Vancouver together. We stayed together with ceremonies where pipes were there, everything that we could do to help support it because we didn't think we had a chance of being able to deter the process. But in fact, we did. We forced them to take the resolution off the table. They decided it was best to go to a referendum. The portion on Quebec that was defeated by Quebec, and across the country, all of our people rejected Charlottetown Accord. It was actually amazing. It was actually pretty amazing. But the next thing was the inherent policy by the Liberals. The process that they're doing, every government and everything that they're doing right now, including Vanderpeet, is trying to get us back pre-1990 Sparrow. They're trying to figure out how to do that. So they want us to sign agreements where we extinguish rights. They want us to do these things because they want us to get back there. But our task right now is to get reorganized. Our task is for us to be able to start to look at our agenda and our solution about what we want. We've got to look at our treaties. We've got to look at those rights that we have. We've got to talk about governance. And we've got to solve community issues. We've got to create a community dialogue. And that community dialogue today, especially around drugs, we have to deal with. The strategy is probably no different than we use for alcohol, to deal with alcohol. But we've got to get in there and we've got to create a dialogue with our communities, whether it's youth by youth or where. So anyways, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I look forward to your commitment.
Okay, so we also allow this 10 minutes for questions. This candidate. Anybody have any questions for candidates, for leaders? Okay, so I'm seeing no questions. We'll move ahead. We are looking for a nominee for the next candidate. If you come up and give us a 5-minute, after 5 minutes.
My name is Russell Doxter Kishigo. I'm fortunate enough to be an elected member of the member of council to the United Nations of Tens and here as a youth delegate. First, I want to start out saying I look up to our nominee as a role model at the political level. Being a newly elected councillor this term, does provide a lot of direction and advice when I ask it. So on behalf of the United Nations of Tens, we support the nomination for Chief Wendell Phillips as the Deputy Grand Chief. because of his extensive political and analytical background on various issues. We believe that Randall will provide change and pace at the political level on behalf of all member nations. A little bit of, I won't go into too much detail or let Randall do that himself, but some of these highlights are he was a political analyst, policy analyst for EFN for approximately 8 years. And this, the list of moreover is kind of over I was 5+ year of experience in political analytical. The analysts in such areas as 19, education, labor, employment, training, and governance. He also worked with the federal government for 7 years in Ottawa. He spent time in the late 1990s as the first policy analyst for 9 years. He worked for the Social Materials at SALT, Social Service Coordinator, Ministry of Aboriginal Affairs. In 2004, he was first elected as the Chief of the United Nations of TIMS, and then again successful term in 2006. He campaigned to become the Grand Chief and was elected for AIA in 2008. He was re-elected in 2011. 2014, he returned to the local politics at the council level. He's running for Ontario Regional Chief before, and he was just this past election in 2016. He was elected for the position of Chief of the United Nations. He's known to be a very strong and vocal advocate for our community and for other First Nations issues. For the past 2 decades, he's been involved in level with the First Nations issues. We'd like to return to those tables, providing a positive contribution in dealing with government interactions. Thank you.
So Louis Ogwe, thank you for doing this for us. I was taught this from Mike Mitchell a long time ago that you gotta bring a paper up when you talk so that you know what you're talking about. First of all, Mr. Louis Ogwe, Buckley Young Guts, I stand before you as a candidate for the Deputy Grand Chief position at AIAI. I had issued a little paper to all the councils on Friday, just kind of outlining my background, my experience, and the reasons why I wanted to hold and run for this position. I'm going to go over that very briefly, but I'm hoping that you all had a chance to read that. And if not, then I did give a copy to your chief, so please ask your chief to review that. But first of all, I want to thank my council for nominating me. I want you to let you know that it wasn't an easy decision for either one of us. And my council asked a lot of questions about this. Why are you leaving? Why are you going? Why do you want to do this? And it was something that I had to do a heartfelt. Our council here is focusing now in terms of trying to fix our community. You've heard the issues, and I know you guys got them too as well. You know, we need to push that. But in pushing that, we're also not at the national table. We're not at the regional tables any longer. There's some concern with regards to the amount of information that those regional tables do, especially the political confederacy. How do they move on those things? We don't know. So there was always a concern of me with respect to how do we move these things forward. And you know, you've heard this issue about trying to move our agenda, but it's very difficult in terms of when government puts us in these boxes and says, this is how we will do it. I understand the need for political accords, but I understand the need to work. We didn't have political accords before, but we still met with government, we still had tables, we still addressed our issues. Nothing has changed in that regard. What's changed now is the process in terms of government saying, hey, this is how you will do things. And I think what I'm hearing loud and clear, certainly from our community, is let's get back to the way we did things. I've heard that here today about this conference as well. So what I want to do is, I don't want to get into all of those things. I just go, hey, I want to put a face to the name. I've seen an awful lot of people here that I haven't seen before. I see a whole bunch of youth delegates that I know that I've never seen before, and I can guarantee you haven't seen me before either. I come with a very long reputation in terms of being a pain in the ass. And I'm sorry about my language, but this is the way I am. I grew up as a fighter. I grew up in terms of, when I grew up in the United States, I grew up in the whole country in terms of Oneida. And at the time I was growing up was the civil rights movement with Martin Luther King. And it was an extraordinary time to grow up because that's what they were talking about was civil rights. I was a young man, I didn't understand civil rights, but I certainly know how the black community was treated. I didn't have a full understanding until I moved across that border into Canada. Canada doesn't have black population. They've got a brown population. And all those prejudices and everything else that you've heard in terms of what's going on, all of a sudden I was subjected to them. I said, why? So that's what started me getting into this notion of how come there's differences? How come we're different just because we're brown? I watched my parents be moved in the back of a restaurant because they were brown. I watched them sit at the back of a line because they were brown. Why? I don't understand that. Never did. So I got involved and say, okay, you know what's stopping us? Is these government policies, these government legislations, these government rules have allowed this system to be enacted upon us. We need a change. So I got involved with this notion of how do we change that? Not only with my mouth, but how do we do it from an intellectual point of view? How do we do it from a policy point of view? How do we do it from a legislative point of view? I read a book one time too. I read a couple books. I read a book one time too. And it was called The Art of War. And what it does is just outline this notion if you're going to be in a combative situation, if you're going to be on opposite sides, then here's some rules in terms of how you play. Here's some ideas in terms of how you move. First one, know your enemy. So I took upon myself to take that path. I worked for the federal government. I worked for the provincial government. I worked for these organizations that said, this is how we're trying to make change. And exactly right, Gordy was one of those leaders. There's a whole bunch of leaders. I've had the opportunity to meet a whole bunch of leaders right across this country. And I've learned from that. You know, I got a certain attitude that, you know, people like or they don't like. And that's fine, I understand that. We all have our personal differences. And that's no different at home either. But the idea here is that you want somebody that's going to defend your rights, whether you like them or not. I didn't run into politics to get favor. I didn't run into politics to be well known. I didn't run into politics so that I could increase the number of friends and acquaintances I had. That was a very fortunate byproduct. So I guess I can't be as mean and miserable as everybody thinks I am all the time. But I'm the kind of a guy that comes back to this notion of fighting. And I kind of sum it up in this way right now. We've all been fighting for years and years and years. Government gives us a handout, that's what we call it. A little bit here, a little bit here. And our communities and our leaders, they don't want to fight about that because they don't want to lose those resources because they know how important it is to the community members. It's not important to us. We've got a way to survive. We got a way to maintain our lives. But it's our community members that don't get that. So we have to fight for those types of things. Regardless of whether we like the process or not, let's change that. But at the end of the day, if the hand that feeds you isn't feeding you properly, then you should bite it. If the hand that feeds you keeps on extending it out and pulling it back, next time you're going to bite it. And that's been my philosophy in terms of going to the deal with these politics and these government officials. They think it's their money. Here's our rules. You can't have it. You can't do this. We don't understand why you want it. We're going to do it this way. And it's time to bite them. So I've had that reputation. I still have that reputation in terms of Police Park. I still have that reputation in terms of Parliament Hill. And I haven't been in politics for 4 or 5 years. I can go to these places and they still know me. I can go and talk to the Premier. She still knows me. Why? It's part of who I am. It's part of how they got to know me was that they've always said, you know, Randy, Chief, We may not like what you say, but you say it straight. We understand what you're saying, and that's what we have to do. Double talk, nice talk, sweet talk. That might get you a couple of pieces of candy, but it's not going to resolve your issues. I'm just tired of just taking the pieces of candy. The other thing I want to kind of change is this too as well, is that this is our organization, and I want to put back to work for us. Chiefs of Ontario have their organization, and they can't call on us to do their work. Where's our issues? How are they being addressed? Each one of our communities have got some issues, but now we've got tables to go deal with it. You wait, put it on that table. And I don't believe that. I think that we should be back in terms of advocacy. I want to see AIAI have that strong advocacy component. There's a large contingent in terms of programs and services. We'll continue to fight for those. We've got those tables. We'll continue to fight. But I want us focused back on our community so we can start benefiting us. Art Donald talked about Boil Water Advisory. So Boil Water Advisory, where are they going? All up north. Where's our fight for Art Donald? Chief Carr, they had the same issue with respect to some of the lands that they had around. Where was that fight for there? I can go around this community and tell you what's going on too in terms of those things, but where's your advocate? Our leadership is put in a very difficult position. They're trying to move things forward in a nice way, but they're dealing with people that don't want to do that too as well. I want to change that. I got one comment here. I got two comments. I got 1 minute, so I'm going to make this fairly quickly. One, I think the biggest issue is if there's questions out there, how can I do this? How can I be chief and deputy branch chief at the same time? And I'm telling you, I've got the energy and I've got the conviction to do that. I wouldn't have put my name forward if I didn't think I could. I miss working with government. I miss yelling at government. I really do. I would rather do that than yell and argue with our people. Because those are our enemies. Our people aren't our enemies. The other thing too, and I want to bring this up because it's been on people's minds for a long time. I was re-elected as a Grand Chief in 2011, in May. And in October of that year, I resigned. And I didn't tell anybody why I resigned. Why? Because it was a personal issue. But people don't believe in personal issues. They got to know what's going on. So I'll tell you right now. I can't tell you right now. So I guess the mystery will continue.
Well, I hit it, cut you guys off. So there's both of you guys come out with some really good words. I think the candidates, the people who's going to be voting have a hard decision to make. Are there any questions for Randall Manal from anybody? We'll allow a few minutes for questions. If there are no questions from the delegates, then we're looking for a volunteer to speak to a candidate for the Grand Chief. Looks like we're having Chief Sayers coming forward.
Could I get Toronto's council up here as well? Mine and their youth representative. Chris, can you come on up, please? Bonjour, Ani. Uganda Managoji Koyak, Shikas, Lajan, Got for that, and it should be good for Jayan. To make this vision for Jayan, as a chance to not we acknowledge and thank our grandmothers and our grandfathers and our ancestors and the Creator for guiding us and bringing us here at this really critical time. And I I want to acknowledge and thank Chief Hillier and your council for hosting this new beginning for our peoples that are aligned with AI. I also want to recognize all of those cultural items that were here today and helped us get started in a good way. And Sema for helping me, inviting me in the words. I'm going to try and relay on behalf of the leadership back home that I'm so honored to be able to reflect today, and it's good to be here with some chiefs from home. I also want to say a couple of things about our friend Chris, who I'm sure a lot of you know, because Chris has been a good helper for the people for a long time. And I've been involved since mid-2000s, around 2005, 2006. And one of the first things that I was really impressed with was Chris's, how Chris carried himself on our behalf of his work and leadership for the association. And around that time, Chris was always staunch in his belief in the youth and empowerment of our people and our people taking ownership and protecting our rights. And he had organized border crossing, and that's such a dear right to all of us. I think being in close proximity to the borders, that's really something that we hold strong. But and Champ has mentioned it a couple of times too about how there was a bomb scare. There was another bomb scare yesterday. It's Sault Ste. Marie, they closed the bridge, and it reminded me of the bomb scare back in the day when the border crossing happened in Sault Ste. Marie. And Chris had organized that border crossing in defense of our rights that were recognized within the Jay Treaty of 1794. And there was other movements across Ontario and Canada, but we needed to see that happen in our neck of the woods. And as a result, there's a good degree of our use and our ability to continue to cross unfettered across the border. So Chris has always had this really great attitude towards and belief and empowering our youth and all our people to be involved. The other one what I wanted to mention to you too was the Ontario First Nations Limited Partnership up in Thunder Bay. One of the biggest concerns for us was our ability to continue to be able to exercise our rights around gaming. And we were looking at the sale of Rama at the time, and we were looking at a new agreement with Ontario. And one of the biggest issues for us was that we wanted to be able to exercise that right uninhibited in any way, where we weren't going to be criminally charged, although there is provisions under the criminal code today. But as a result, we've got a really great OFNLP 2008 agreement on because of Chris being in a leadership position to see that happen with the committee to protect our gaming dollars and our gaming agreements. And as a result, I really appreciate that sanction. There's a sanction if we don't align ourselves with the collective, we would be sanctioned, et cetera, et cetera. And the last one I wanted to make mention is the HST. When you go to the stores today, you use your status card for your purchases, and I hope you use that even for a pockets account. But we have to continue to use that, and that was protected. And that was protected during the discussions around the HST, and we fought hard, and Chris was making some great movements as a leader at the time with the association, and we were able to maintain our PST exemption within those HST discussions, which was the rolling up of the PST and the GST into the HST and the LMNOP, all of those things. But we enjoyed those rights because of the efforts, and this association has been the backbone of maintaining a lot of the rights that you enjoy and all of Indigenous people enjoy in Ontario, and for that matter, across Canada. And it's an honor to have been able to work with these guys, including Chris and our Grand Chief right now. So may wish everybody, and thank you for your possible support of our candidate.
Wish Chief Sayers.
I'd like to recognize that we're on Chief Hillier's traditional territory. I'd like to recognize our legal staff. I'd like to thank my chief and council for the wonderful support that I've got here today. It's an honor to be a member of my community. I've had the opportunity to serve as deputy grand chief of this association. For 3 years, I was grand chief. Was I grand chief of an active member of the Political Confederacy of Chiefs of Ontario. I held a portfolio of statistical institution. I held the portfolio of taxation. I was an alternate on education and international relations. I've worked all the major part of my working life fighting for First Nations and First Nations people. And during that time, I've had a lot of experience in lobbying and advocating for Aboriginal freeways. Just sort of pausing again. Yes, I want to share a story with you. A while back, I was the guidance counselor of the National Living Workshop. We had youth from right across Canada. We camped up in the bush for 2 weeks. We had spiritual leaders, we had medicine people, and we had a cultural exchange with all of the students from across the country to share our cultures. From there, we went to the first ever Indian Ecumenical Conference in Canada. For those of you that don't know what that was about, it was an international meeting where they had medicine people from the United States, they had spiritual people from the United States, and right across Canada. It was a ceremonial gathering. And there we went to Russell Maginot's camp. And Russell had moved his people off the reserve, and he was living off the land. So we camped there. In the morning, Russell come by. Russell come to welcome us to the camp. We're talking to him, and he said, "See you over there." And there was a maple sapling about that high, not too far from it. There was a poplar one. He says, "You see that?" He says, "They're growing side by side." He says, "They have their own branches, they have their own leaves, and they're strong." He said, "They're growing the way the Creator intended them to do." And we are sovereign people. There's a definition of the United Nations of sovereignty. What it says is that a state is defined by a permanent population, a government, a language, and the ability, capacity to enter into treaties. We have all of those components, all of those elements. So I think it's important that the Assembly understand the way that I think. But that being said, the mandate from the Grand Chief from this association is going to be determined right here. It's going to be determined by a resolution, where and what you want your association to do for you. It's also going to be determined by a united position, the Chiefs Council, by the chiefs in their communities. And it's also going to be determined by your chief coming forward to the Chiefs Council at AIAI with issues that need to be dealt with in the community. I think one of the areas that we should be concentrating on is what's going on with the federal government. We have a prime minister that said that the most important thing to him and to Canada is the relationship with the Indigenous people. To that end, he set up a minister committee. It's actually chaired by our sister from British Columbia, the Minister of Justice, and Auditor, not the Auditor General. And
And then there's the Minister of Social, the Minister of Diane, the Minister of Health, the Minister of Natural Resources, and the Minister of Ocean. So this committee is set up to look at whether the policy, the legislation, and the operation procedures meet our Aboriginal treaty rights and our rights in the Declaration of the UN, Declaration of Indigenous Peoples. So one of the things I'd like to encourage you is that if you've got issues that are happening in your community that pertain to the ministers that are sitting on that committee, is that we should be informing them what they are. Because in a lot of cases, those ministers will be informed by their staff, bureaucrats in the ministry. For instance, one community member said to me, he says, Chris, they're selling our crown land in our traditional area. That's something that needs to go to that committee, to bring it to their attention, because we can't assume that everyone will. Another thing that should be going there, all the work that is done by First Nations people, to see that our people are treated in a fair and efficient manner. And I think there's been some tragedies since the Georgian principle has been implemented and passed by Canada. Another area that we could consider lobbying, there's been a recent statement by the Pope to the Third Forum of Indigenous Peoples Worldwide in Rome. And what he said is there can be no impact on our land, on our territories, without our prior and former consent. So the thing that I'm looking at here, I just did a quick research in the London Diocese. There's 417,000 Catholics. There's 115 primary schools, and there's 15 secondary schools. So what I'm interested in, the Pope, as the head of the Catholic Church, this is only one diocese, is what steps that they are going to take to educate non-Native people about the rights of First Nations. One of the things that we lack in this country is a lot of Canadian people don't understand what our issues are, and they don't know what our rights are. So if the church was willing to support us in an educational program of Catholics, I think that down the road, that would have an impact on future generations. Another thing that's come out of the initiatives by this Prime Minister is there was a lot of resources that were targeted specifically to First Nation areas. I can't name them all, but it was health, it was the Guardian program, which is your ability to participate in shepherding land, housing, social. And one of the things in there is youth. And if we want to succeed, then our youth have got to be able to participate in the economy. They need education, they need skills training, and they need jobs. And we don't want to miss this opportunity. Another area that's come up in the funding is 89.9 has been designated for revitalizing languages, Aboriginal languages in schools. And we've got to make sure that our schools are accessing these resources to be able to have our children learn their language and learn their culture. There's one thing that I'm not aware of, and that is that if the Prime Minister has designated these resources, I don't know whether any of our communities are receiving them. And I think if we aren't, in whatever category, or if you haven't applied, if you've applied and you're not receiving them, then I think it's time now to move to find out why these resources aren't coming down to the communities. There's a lot of important things that we could do with those resources. see that I got my ticket. So before I overrun it, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone for listening to me. And all the best. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Chris, anybody have any questions for Chris? Okay, we're looking for somebody to volunteer to come forward for the next candidate. Chief Miracle.
Sego Samacuego. I would like to thank Elder Lois Cornelius for her prayers offered today, this morning. They're greatly appreciated, and we bring greetings to all of our chiefs and delegates here from Mohawk's Bay Quinny. It's a very difficult decision when you nominate somebody, because I'm friends with all of the candidates who are running for office, so it's they all have certain talents and skills that they can bring to the office, and I wish them all my very best. The Kannandaigua Mohawk Council discussed the nomination and signed a resolution to nominate Murray Miracle to the position of the Grand Chief. As most of you know, there's an awful lot of unmet need in the First Nations community that relates to post-secondary education for our young people, housing for people on low incomes and good incomes. The land claim policy is inadequate to settle claims. There's a serious need for water to correct public health problems. There's a need for economic development and infrastructure that supports economic development. The Prime Minister made a commitment that he would review any legislation or policy that affects and negatively impacts on our people. I don't hear very many discussions on what we're doing politically to change any of those policies or legislation that we don't like. We lament our problems from one generation to another, and there has been a lot of gain in recent years, but there's also an awful lot of unmet need. I think it's for that reason that Murray has offered his name to stand for the position of Grand Chief. Murray is married for 46 years to Sharon. He's got 4 children. He's lived and grown up in the community. He's played ball and hockey and all kinds of sports with people in the community. He's served 3 terms on council. He's held the infrastructure, policing, capital infrastructure portfolio, 30 years learning program, and education. See, he's been involved as working with the government in senior management positions with Indian Affairs. He has worked for AIAI. He has worked for the Federation of Saskatchewan Indian Nations, the First Nations Technical Institute. He was the first chair. He's worked with the Chiefs of Ontario and the Union of Ontario Indians. He's made many contacts with senior management within the government, both federally and provincial, in the political arena. He founded the Aboriginal Institute Consortium, which lobbies for funds with 9 post-secondary Aboriginal institutes in Ontario. He served for 12 years as a premier appointed to the Council of Regents, which is the body that controls the 4 college boards. He's now, through that effort, most colleges now have an Aboriginal person to sit on their board of governors in the college. He's received the Distinguished Service Award from Queen's University, and he's a lifetime member of the Queen's University Council. And currently he is part owner of Stratus Environmental Consulting firm in Collingwood, Ontario, which will focus on water and wastewater management. So that's the background that he brings to this position. And he's from a family member. So first of all, I've known Murray since before I started school. He his mother and my mother and grandmother were great friends, and I thought his mother was my godmother. And my grandmother gave him his nickname Topper. And so anyway, but we know our families have been friends, and maybe it's a conflict of interest, but his sister is married to my brother, and Ken's sister is married to Murray. So from a family perspective, I'll turn it over to Councillor Ted Miracle.
Thanks, Bob. Just slow down my phone there, but that's okay. I know they call him Murray, but we call him Topper. Maybe or Top or maybe Uncle Top. Top's married to my sister 46 years, and he's a brother-in-law. He was more like a brother to me than a brother-in-law. We shared many times together, family moments together. We still do. He's raised 4 children. He's raised 9 grandchildren, and many nephews and nieces that my brothers just adore him. I don't know why he teases them all. They keep going back for more. But he's been part of our family for many years, and we play ball together, we play hockey together, we fish together. Oh, and anyway, congratulations, Tom. Hope you do well. Thanks.
Okay, we have Murray Miracle come up, and we'll give him 10 minutes as well, and we'll give him questions after.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here. Beautiful day out. I'd like to acknowledge the Eagle staff for the good words spoken by Elder this morning, and especially a big thank you to Chief Fitter for having us in her tradition. Beautiful area. I'm going to take you on a little journey, and it's going to be a 100-year journey. And we're going to start in 1923. And we all know the famous statement that was made. That would get rid of the Indian problem. Our objective is to ensure that there's not a single Indian left in Canada. And that was the famous words of the fellow we all know by name of Mountain Canada Scott. That was in 1923, that was less than 100 years ago. And I really want to acknowledge those leaders. And at that time, I don't know if you would have the fortitude or passion to fight against those issues. Under that regime, we went through residential school and all colonial policies. And I really want to thank and acknowledge those chiefs at that time because they had passion. Otherwise, we wouldn't be at this meeting and we wouldn't be here. So they had a passion, they had a commitment to fight against that. Then I remember they would carpool a lot of times. We didn't have the travel dollars, we didn't have the association. We weren't formed in the association at that time. And again in 1969, when they wrote down, 1969, I believe, it was the beginning of this again, we came together again. That's probably the best thing that the government ever did to us, because we came together as groups, we came together as nations. We came together in that time we can make a lot of difference. And I remember when I first got into politics and got into Aboriginal issues, I remember begging my father, and I was just maybe 6 or 7, take me to meetings, listen to boards. He was a great chief at that time. We got to go to meetings. I've been at probably every Chiefs Ontario meeting and a lot of AFN meetings. I hear one issue that bothers me a lot. And the one issue that I hear people saying is that we're here at the same table talking about the same issue. When are we going to solve this issue? But it isn't the same issue. If we look this morning at the report that the Grand Chief gave us, we have made great strides. We don't often give ourselves an opportunity to acknowledge what we have done over these years. There's a lot more to do yet, but we are still here to make that fight. Because of those colonial policies and such, we've ended up in a situation where we're in poverty, we're on small pieces of land, and it's time now to move away from that. And even when we're on these small pieces of land, in my community, we have one, the range of 200 acres that we want to add to our community. They only want to give us money, and our community wants the land because we are on a small piece of land, we have a large population, so land is very important to us. So that inherent right policy, to me, is only a legitimate way to sell our property out. So that property that we want under their own process is still a normal stage, that's been for quite a while. We've got to rectify those things. Chief Hillier, in the same situation. They can take our land away in a stroke of a pen, but it takes us 20, 30 years to get that land back to the status it should be. And then we end up cleaning up all that land, but we got to do the environmental studies on that. For the people who polluted that land, hard work getting it back. For some reason, that doesn't seem right with them. There are issues that are facing us, and we know what those issues are. We all know what those issues are. Some of those issues, for example, post-secondary. We are sending less people to post-secondary now than we did 10 years ago. Rates of pollution are went so high, and we have been under 2% cap for a period of time now, that we are now starting to send less people to post-secondary. Those are our future leaders. Those are the people that we need back in our communities. We have done a great job doing that. And we have some of our people coming back with us, some of our educated people coming back with us, and taking part in our communities and providing that nourishment that we do need. So I applaud that. When it comes to the Average Institutes Consortium, I remember starting out with that organization back in '85. And at that time, I was working for the Chiefs of Ontario, and I said, I want to take 6 weeks, and I want to go home, and I want to start an institution, private institution for us, post-secondary. Nobody gave me 6 weeks and 6 months. I took a leave of absence. 17 years later, I don't think my leave of absence went that long, but 17 years later, we accomplished that. We have our own post-secondary institution. We have 9 in now. They are doing good work. The speaker you had this morning, Isidore Day, was one of my students, one of the graduates of our own institution. And they're coming back to us. And I can go around and I can be at different meetings. Some of the graduates from those programs that we operate in community are now working in our communities. They're not senior positions in our communities. So that's very important to continue that. There were only 2 things when we got together as a group. And that was to deal with a funding issue and to deal with accreditation. Now, we always want to have immediate success. That doesn't happen. And over this 100 years that we've been in this process, we don't get that immediate success that we want. It always takes longer. It always takes more negotiation. So that process that we entered in 1992 is now coming to fruition. That's 30 years later in our institutions. We have this year doubled our funding, which is huge for our community. We cannot operate without waiting for the government to say that we have enough money to continue another year, continue another year. We have some stability. Now we have to answer the question about accreditation. They want us to go under legislative accreditation in our communities. I don't think that's where accreditation comes from. Accreditation comes from people up there. That's where accreditation comes from. And we went into that argument next. We always want to have that instant gratification. But if we look at the 100 years that we've been in, we've made some great gains. There's been huge gains in our communities. I was talking with Chief Ardonald just a couple of weeks ago, and we have a flooding issue right now, and it's rather devastating. And we were talking about those issues, and we remember back when one highway, which is Highway 49 now, used to be a dirt road, and it would be washed out every spring. We could not use that road. There were several other roads in our community that we couldn't use. And that's in a very short time. Now, that road's paved road, we have access to that. But we are still not where we want to be yet. There's still a lot of work to do. I worked with a gentleman from Montessori named Ernie Bennett, he was an elder there. And he gave me a piece of information that I hold strong in my heart. And he says that you don't have the luxury of being frustrated. And I thought about that for a long time. I didn't realize that I got older than I did. I get frustrated with government. I get frustrated with officials. I get frustrated with the legislation. I get frustrated. The more frustrated I got, the less effective I was. I back up and I looked at it and I said, I'm not be frustrated by this because I know the answer to it. The answers from our communities, the answer from our chief of council. That's where the answer lies. So I was paying too much attention to that over there. And we do that for a while. We built ourselves into a process and look for what's the 4-year plan because that's the longest federal government, provincial governments in place. We honestly look at it, we built our plans off of 4-year plans. Well, we could have built longer plans. Culture, education, and language is a huge issue. We have almost lost our language in our community. We have to use this foreign language to communicate now. It is not going to come back to us in 4 years. It's a generation. It's going to take a generation to get that language back. So when we make a plan for regaining our language, get our language back, it has to be a 30-year, 40-year, 50-year plan. And we have to tell government that this is our plan, this is how we want to do things. The more we go with the solution to governments, the better that we're going to be on. And the more luck that we're going to have on changing those issues. So when we develop policies that we have in our community, we have to develop them on our side and take it to government. Two things that run the government, they want to look good, they want to get reelected and release it. So as long as we develop the solutions for those people, they will take those solutions, they will those solutions for great easily for us. But we have to develop it. We can't do it in short term, we have to do it in the long term. We can't become frustrated. We've got to make sure that we stay the course. We have to make sure that we stay to our cultures and to the language that we have, and to the work that those politicians have done before us. Now they move the yardstick forward for us. It's up to us now to move it a little further. Then the generation that comes behind us will move it a little further. So that we are not looking at the instant win, instant access. It's going to be a long time, it's going to be a generation. So we will continue to do that. We know that we are better off, we're better off in our communities now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, okay, we have one more candidate, I understand out there. We do have a nominee come forward and speak for your candidate.
Hey, my name is Councilor Clint Munoz from Niagara. I didn't realize, and I wasn't prepared to make a speech as far as nominations, this discussion at our council this week. Got the information that this was an election year, so in my brief experience with working with Joel, both as a councilor, I've had the opportunity of 3 terms. And I found Joel to be very articulate with regards to dealing with council and dealing with the government. And he put an impression on me as far as being he's a good person that wants to get things done and has the opportunity and when he was chief and both as councilor for a minute. And I really appreciate working with him. He's got a good sense of humor and he can take direction well. And he likes to have a good time, but make sure that his point is put across. And when, like I said earlier, when it was time to make this nomination, right, didn't hesitate, and we just had a discussion. And so, I'd just like to have Joel be considered. And Chief Hiller, I'd like to thank you again for a great day and allowing us to come get territory for this AGA.
Siguro sa buhay aquí, pagkat sa nilunigi, sa buong pwede ito na halalong sa mga dinis, mga chibudyo, kanto, hindi sa mga Dewas na ganyan yung yats, tayo ni bigis tanong, manida aga ni kampung joda, manida aga yung gulong ne, So I'd like to thank everyone for coming here today, and thought it was important to express myself in my language. I'm from Oneida, I'm from the Wolf Clan. Oneida Indians language is pretty important to me, so I've been trying to learn a few more words. I'd just like to tell you a little bit about myself, for those of you who don't know me. I'm sure a lot of you do know me. I've had 12 years experience on our council, 3 terms as elected chief of also 3 terms as a counselor, so I've had a lot of opportunities in terms of getting that political experience, and I think I was 46 years old now, so I've managed to accumulate some good experiences in that time. So I've got some experiences in lobbying, and going to the federal government, going to the provincial government, rallying. Remember one time I fell down at a rally and someone, instead of helping me out, ran away because they thought I got shot. I'm not looking at anyone in particular. That's neither here nor there. I've got media experience. We have a community radio station back home, and I've been involved with them as in a capacity as a DJ, as a fundraiser, and as a nerd, I guess you could say. And so ever since after my first couple of days, someone came and told me I had the perfect face for radio, so I've been there ever since. Anyway. One of the things that it was kind of very short notice for me, so I do apologize for not getting out to the communities. Just no disrespect or anything like that. And I was on a Friday, and someone told me council was interested in having me run for this position. And so I said, okay, I like a couple of days to think about it. So when they called me Monday and told me to sign a VCR, I said, okay, let's do this thing. And so I've been sort of thinking about things since then. And so one of the things that I would like to, say is that, there's things that AIA is going to be involved in at the PC level, at the federal level, at the provincial level, doing those kind of things, and I'm looking at making those constant progressions there while acknowledging the work that has already gone down before. In terms of doing things a little differently, I think there are several things that I'd like to, for consideration. And one of them, I think I hear it again and again, is communications. And just being I'm not currently on council, so I've had opportunity to look at things from sort of a different perspective when I've been through that experience. And one of the perspectives that I gained is that visibility and connection with the grassroots people, they really want that, but that's not really there. So one of the methods that I really like to take a look at is working with the youth, because the youth, they are all in contact with each other, a lot of them by Facebook or Instagram or social media. So we really need to up our social media game. And that's one thing I constantly hearing, for the last little while, is that we really want a connection with leadership, so leadership hears their voices. And I think that's something that really needs to come to the forefront, is communication, not only with the chiefs and the councils, but also the citizens of our nations themselves. I think that can be accomplished in several ways, by having more general assemblies perhaps, by having information sessions in the communities. There's a lot of things that we can be doing to get out there and make those connections with people. Because there's no reason that, we can't help out a member from Batchewana who has an issue or a question or whatever services that we can provide. I think that's something that we need to do a better job at, is outreach, and I think that's something that would be a positive thing for us. And in terms of communication, also the councilors themselves, I think they should have more involvement in AIA themselves and be more knowledgeable about what's going on, because that's how you gain those experiences, is getting out there and speaking your mind and having your input, those kind of things. So I think just having more inclusivity and creating the kind of environment for that. As a nerd, I guess you could say, I'd like to take a look at some of the technology that's available for us. Maybe there's some things that we can do that can cut down on its cost by using the technology that's available out there today. And so maybe having a technological review to take a look at what's out there, so we can, maybe we can cut down on meeting costs. We don't have to all go to Toronto and, all the time. Maybe we can just have a good video conference, have the materials right up on screen. There's some easy ways to do that. So I think we can, it'd be worth an investment to take a look at those kind of things. Another thing is advocacy. And what I'm talking about is practical results for the AI communities. Do you want a sewage treatment plant? Well, let's set up those meetings. Do you want to take a look at child welfare, but you're having trouble getting a meeting? Well, let's give me a call. Let's take a look at that, let's get those meetings down. So there's a lot of things that we can do to make practical differences in each community. I think that's something that I'd like to concentrate on if selected as an issue. Some of the issues that I care about now is language, obviously. Right now, I think a lot of communities are in crisis with opioid addictions and different things like that. But if you shut down the drug houses, what do we have available for the people that are trying to quit those habits? There's not a lot of those resources available right now. So, that's great. Right now, just the other day, we had someone got stabbed in the head and those kind of things. And that's, those crazy kind of things are happening with more and more frequency. And those are the kind of issues that I think I'd like to tackle. Also, education again is very important. In mental health, and of course policing. Of course, that's been a bone of contention for a long time. And I kind of think we have to come to our own position first firmly, and then get a strategy together to tackle that. Like, do we really want to be the employers of the police? That's been the main issue. And my contention is you don't want that liability. So once you establish a position sort of similar to that, you find an agreement that's going to work for you, and find a way to make that happen. So that's mostly what I wanted to say. The other thing, I think, with regards to legislation, we have to have a strong stand, and I think the simple way to do that is to use UNDRIP. If it does not meet the standards of UNDRIP, then we make those automatic, pronouncements regarding that. Because that's something that Canada has adopted, and that's something that we have to continue pressing forward on. And the other thing that I'd like to talk about is when we're talking about agreements, one of the things that we have to be careful of, you never hear this talked about anywhere in the media, is Canada used to have what's called an extinguishment policy. But now they got criticized that so long at the United Nations, now they've replaced that with what's called a non-assertion technique policy. So basically what that means is when they want you to agree to something, they're going to give you a benefit, but you have to agree not to assert your rights. And that's a very common thing. We've seen that in the Algonquin Agreement and all those sorts of things out there. So I think we have to be cognizant of those things when government throws out those types of agreements. Those are the kind of things we have to be aware of. And that sort of policy is basically extinguishment in sheep's clothing. So those are some of the things that I'd like for us to be aware of, even if I'm not selected, just to going forward. So I don't have too much more to say other than that. I've introduced myself and talked about a lot of the places that I want to go with regards to social media, youth, and all sorts of things. So you have a very important decision to make tomorrow, and if it's not me, at least I know we have 2 other good candidates, and we'll be in good hands going forward. So you don't want to go your home.
We'll allow 5 minutes if anybody has any questions for Joel. I think we've heard from the candidates, all of them, for Deputy Grand Chief and for Grand Chief. Delegates tomorrow, we remember our Grand Chief, who warm used to wearing our colored lanyards, voted delegates, don't forget them. I think Jeff has a few words in regard to the First Nation caucuses. President to this part of it, we have initiated something today and we're going to do John tomorrow morning.
Initiative. So the rest of the day is going to be spent within caucus sessions last year. Your nations. So we've set up different areas and groups throughout the building and outside for you to meet as council, as leadership, as nations. So Caldwell, we just assumed that you guys could meet in the chief's office. And there's a space in the chief's office for Caldwell delegates. Oneida Nation, there's space in the library downstairs. So if you go to the left over here, there's a stairway that goes down, so go down to the end of the stairs, make a left, and then take you towards the library. us your nation name, where you're going to be. Mohawks the Bay of Quinte. So right next to the library, there's a main room downstairs. That's set aside for you guys to meet with the tables and chairs up there. So again, downstairs here. Bachuana, there's a tent set up outside. So if you go down these stairs here, and straight up the door to the left, there's a tent there with some tables and chairs. You guys can use that as a caucus area. Delaware Nation. You can utilize this back corner over here, or even where you're sitting at now, if you choose to do so. That can be your caucus area. What the Mohawks, you'll be right beside Bachuana outside in the tent. Go down these stairs and out to the left. That'll be your caucus area. Hiawatha, right in this corner. So again, that's for our regular agenda. I encourage everybody to approach the candidates and invite them to their caucus sessions, ask them questions.
After this year, I usually have a series of them.
I believe we have a draw.
First winner is Lori Carr. Second winner is Lonnie.
We can do it. Where's your sound, or were you just feeding off the loudspeakers?
Oh, it actually has a really good microphone right there right now. It's like,